The forbidden species captain, Sarah Chen, floated through the empty corridors of the ancient space station, her helmet light cutting through 2 centuries of darkness. The Kepler station had been abandoned since the Great Silence, when humanity was cast out from galactic affairs. Most humans believed it was because they weren't advanced enough, weren't worthy of joining the greater cosmic community. Sarah was about to learn how wrong they all were. Her scanner beeped as she approached what looked like a massive sealed vault. The door bore symbols from a dozen different alien civilizations, all surrounding one central image that made her blood run cold. It was Earth, but marked with symbols she recognized as warnings in several galactic languages. She pressed her gloved hand against the bioscanner, and to her surprise, it accepted her human DNA signature. The massive doors groaned open, revealing the most complete galactic archive she had ever seen. The holographic displays flickered to life as she entered, responding to her presence. Thousands of files floated in the air around her, all marked with the same symbol she had seen on the door. As she reached for the nearest file, a voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in perfect English with a slight alien accent. "Welcome, human. I am Archive Unit 7. I've been waiting 203 years for one of your species to find this place." The voice seemed ancient, tired. "You seek answers about why your people were excluded from galactic society. The truth may be more than you wish to know." Sarah steadied herself against a console. "Tell me everything." The archive began to play a holographic recording. The scene that materialized around her was of a massive courtroom filled with beings from across the galaxy. At the center stood a human man in a simple uniform, calm and dignified despite being the only member of his species present. "This is the trial of Ambassador James Rivera, recorded 204 years ago," the archive explained. "He was humanity's representative during what you call the Nexus Rebellion. Watch carefully, Captain Chen. This is why your species was banned from galactic warfare." The recording showed the alien judge, a towering crystalline being, addressing the human ambassador. "Ambassador Rivera, the Galactic Council has reviewed the events of the Nexus conflict. Your species' involvement was limited to a single system, yet the results were unprecedented." Sarah watched as the ambassador nodded respectfully. "We did what we believed was right, Your Honor." "You did far more than that," another judge interjected, this one resembling a metallic tree with glowing branches. "In 6 months, you ended a war that had raged for 15 years, but it wasn't how you ended it that concerns us. It was what you did to both sides." The scene shifted to show battlefield recordings from the Nexus system. Sarah expected to see advanced human weapons or superior tactics. Instead, she saw something that made no sense. Human soldiers were sitting in circles with enemy combatants, sharing food and telling stories. Human medics were treating wounded from both sides equally. Human engineers were rebuilding destroyed cities while the war was still supposedly raging around them. The Korhan Empire and the Nexus Federation had been locked in a bitter conflict, the archive narrated. Resources depleted, populations suffering, neither side willing to surrender. Then the humans arrived, claiming they were there to help maintain peace. Sarah watched as the recording showed a human soldier, barely out of his teens, approaching a group of heavily armed Korhan warriors. Instead of raising his weapon, he pulled out a small device and began playing music. Not just any music, but a soft melody that seemed to speak directly to something deep within the alien warriors. One by one, they lowered their weapons, not in surrender, but in wonder. "The humans didn't fight the war," the crystalline judge continued in the trial recording. "They transformed it. They turned battlefields into meeting places. They converted weapons factories into art studios. They taught children from both sides to play games together while their parents were supposed to be killing each other." The Recording shifted to show a human woman, Dr. Elizabeth Santos, standing before a crowd of soldiers from both armies. She wasn't giving orders or battle plans. She was telling them a story about a planet where two different species of flowers had learned to grow together, creating something more beautiful than either could achieve alone. As she spoke, Sarah could see the faces of the alien soldiers, changing, hope replacing hatred in their eyes. But the most disturbing part, another judge added, was what happened to their war machines. The recording showed massive battle cruisers that had been converted into mobile hospitals and schools, weapons that had been turned into tools for building instead of destroying. They didn't just stop the fighting, they made it impossible for either side to remember why they had wanted to fight in the first place. Ambassador Rivera spoke quietly. In the recording, we showed them that there was another way. We reminded them of who they could be instead of what they were afraid of becoming. The trial recording paused, and the archive spoke directly to Sarah again. What you just witnessed was the reason for humanity's exile, Captain Chen. Not because you were too weak to participate in galactic warfare, but because you were too powerful. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Too powerful, but we barely had space travel. Our weapons were primitive compared to theirs. Your weapons were not made of metal and energy, human. Your weapons were stories, music, art, empathy, and something the galaxy had never encountered before. The ability to make your enemies remember their own humanity. Within 6 months of human involvement, the Nexus Rebellion didn't end in victory or defeat. It ended in transformation. Former enemies became partners. War machines became instruments of creation. Soldiers became teachers and healers. The recording resumed, showing the final moments of the trial. The crystalline judge delivered the verdict with what seemed like regret. Ambassador Rivera, while we acknowledge that your people's actions brought peace to the Nexus system, the methods you employed are deemed too dangerous for galactic security. Humanity possesses the ability to fundamentally alter the nature of any conflict they enter. This power could destabilize the established order of the galaxy. You're saying we're dangerous because we try to make peace? Rivera asked. You're dangerous because you succeed, the judge replied, and because your method of peacemaking changes everyone it touches. The Galactic Council hereby votes to exclude humanity from all future interstellar conflicts. This is not a punishment, Ambassador Rivera. It is a precaution. The recording ended, leaving Sarah alone in the archive chamber. Her mind raced as she tried to process what she had learned. Humanity hadn't been excluded because they were inferior. They had been banned because they were too good at turning enemies into friends, too effective at making war itself seem pointless. There is more, Captain Chen, the archive said. Recent files that may interest you. The galaxy is facing a new threat, one that traditional warfare cannot touch. The Galactic Council may soon discover that they need humanity more than they feared it. New holographic files appeared around Sarah, these ones marked with urgent priority codes. She opened the first one and gasped. The images showed entire star systems going dark, not destroyed but simply empty. Planets stripped not just of life, but of meaning itself. The Void Collective, the archive explained. They appeared 6 months ago from beyond the galactic rim. They don't conquer worlds, Captain Chen. They drain them of purpose, of connection, of the very essence that makes life worth living. Every weapon the galaxy has turned against them passes through them harmlessly. Every strategy fails because the Void Collective doesn't want territory or resources. They want to reduce everything to nothing. Sarah studied the tactical reports. Fleet after fleet had engaged the Void Collective, only to have their crews lose the will to fight, their ships drifting aimlessly as their occupants fell into a strange emptiness that no medical science could cure. The galaxy is losing, Captain Chen, and for the first time in 200 years, some members of the Galactic Council are beginning to remember why they feared humanity in the first place. Not because you might destroy your enemies, but because you might save them, even enemies like the Void Collective. As Sarah prepared to leave the archive, carrying with her the most important secret in galactic history, she couldn't help but smile. Humanity had been kept out of galactic wars, not because they were too weak, but because they were too strong. Too strong in all the ways that really mattered. The galaxy was about to learn that some problems couldn't be solved with bigger weapons or better tactics. Some problems could only be solved with the one thing humans had always been best at, reminding others of what it meant to be alive, to hope, to connect with something greater than themselves. As her ship powered up for the journey back to Earth, Sarah looked out at the stars and whispered, "Hold on, Galaxy, help is coming, whether you want it or not." Too late to stop us? The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in absolute desperation. High Counselor Thara, her usually pristine crystalline form now cracked with stress fractures, addressed the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. The great chamber that had once echoed with debates about trade routes and territorial disputes now felt like a tomb, half empty as world after world fell to the advancing Void Collective. "We have lost the Andorian colonies," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of 40 billion lives. "The Krexian defensive fleet has gone silent. At current progression rates, the Void Collective will reach the core worlds within 3 standard months." She paused, the next words clearly painful to speak. "Traditional warfare has proven completely ineffective against this enemy." Admiral Zex Corvani, now ancient but still bearing the scars of conflicts spanning 3 centuries, stood slowly. His 4 arms trembled slightly, not from age but from the weight of what he was about to suggest. "High Counselor, there may be one option we have not considered. Speak freely, Admiral. We need to contact Earth." The chamber erupted in shocked voices, translated into 100 different languages, but all expressing the same disbelief. Thara's form pulsed with incredulous light. "Admiral, humanity was banned from galactic affairs for very specific reasons. Reasons you, more than anyone, should remember." Corvani's mandibles clicked in what humans would recognize as a bitter laugh. "I remember very well, High Counselor. I was there during the Nexus Rebellion. I fought against the humans." He turned to address the entire assembly. "And that is precisely why I know we need them now." As the chamber fell silent, Corvani continued, "I watched human soldiers turn my own troops against me, not through force or deception, but through kindness. I saw them convert our weapons into medical equipment. I witnessed them teach our children songs that made us question why we were fighting in the first place." His voice grew stronger. "The Void Collective drains meaning from everything it touches. What do we send against an enemy that steals purpose itself? We send the species that creates purpose wherever it goes." 3 days later, a small diplomatic vessel dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. It had been over 2 centuries since any official galactic ship had visited Earth. The ship's crew, led by a nervous Thraxian diplomat named Kess, expected to find a primitive world, perhaps bitter about their long exile. Instead, they found something that left them speechless. Earth's orbital space was filled with structures unlike anything in galactic records. Not weapons platforms or defensive stations, but something that looked almost organic, like flowers made of metal and light. As their ship approached, they were greeted not by military vessels, but by a single small craft piloted by a middle-aged human woman. "Welcome to Earth," the woman said, her voice warm over the communications channel. "I'm Dr. Marcus Webb's assistant, Lisa. He's been expecting you." "Expecting us?" Kess managed to stammer. "But we sent no advance warning." "Oh, we've been watching the galaxy for 200 years, Lisa replied cheerfully. "We knew you'd come." Eventually, Marcus has been preparing for this day since he was a child. They were escorted to Earth's surface, to a place that had once been called Geneva. The human cities were unlike anything the galactic visitors had ever seen. Buildings that seemed to grow from the ground, parks that flowed seamlessly into urban areas, and everywhere art, not displayed in museums, but integrated into daily life, as if the entire planet had become a living canvas. Dr. Marcus Webb met them in a simple building that somehow felt vast despite its modest size. He was an elderly human with kind eyes and silver hair, wearing clothes that seemed to shimmer with subtle patterns. Behind him stood dozens of other humans, men and women of all ages, all wearing similar garments. "Dr. Webb," Kess began formally, "we come from the Galactic Council. Our situation is desperate. We need your help." Webb smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed both sadness and hope. "We know about the Void Collective, Ambassador Kess. We've been feeling their presence for months, like a cold shadow falling across the galaxy." He gestured to the people behind him. "These are the volunteers we've been training for 2 centuries for exactly this moment." "Training?" Kess asked. "Training for what?" "To do what humans do best," Webb replied. "To remind others what it means. To be alive." Within hours, human ships began launching from Earth, not warships, but vessels filled with artists, musicians, storytellers, teachers, and healers. They carried no weapons, no armor, no shields. Instead, their cargo holds contained instruments, canvases, books, seeds, and thousands of small devices that served no military purpose whatsoever. The first human ship to encounter the Void Collective was the Harmony, piloted by Captain Elena Rodriguez and carrying a crew of 23 volunteers. As they approached the dark region where the Void Collective had consumed the Kepler colonies, their instruments detected something that made no sense: the absence of everything. "It's not just that life is gone," reported their sensor operator, a young man named David. "It's like the very concept of life has been drained away. The planets are still there, but they're empty in a way I can't describe." "Then let's fill them up again," Elena said simply. The Harmony entered the dead system and immediately began broadcasting. Not military signals or scientific data, but music. Soft at first, then growing stronger. Children's lullabies from Earth, work songs from human colonies, love ballads that spoke of connection across impossible distances. As the music spread through the system, something unprecedented happened. The Void Collective noticed them. The entities that emerged from the emptiness were unlike anything previously encountered. They weren't beings in any traditional sense, but rather absences of being, spaces where existence itself had been hollowed out. They approached the human ship not with hostility, but with something that might have been curiosity. Elena stood and walked to the communications console. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of Earth. We know you're out there, we know you're listening, and we want you to know something important." She paused, then continued in a voice filled with gentle certainty. "You don't have to be empty anymore." What happened next would be discussed by galactic historians for millennia. The Void Collective entities didn't attack the human ship. Instead, they began to change. Slowly, almost hesitantly, they started to take on form. Not copying the humans, but becoming something new, something that had never existed before. Over the following weeks, more human ships arrived. They landed on the empty worlds and began doing what humans had always done best, creating meaning where none existed before. They planted gardens in sterile soil, painted murals on blank walls, and told stories to anyone who would listen, including the evolving entities that had once been the Void Collective. The transformation wasn't immediate or complete. Some of the Void entities resisted, clinging to their emptiness, but others began to experience something they had never known. the possibility of becoming something more than nothing. Dr. Webb arrived on the flagship Hope, carrying with him Earth's most precious gift, the collected wisdom of 2 centuries of isolation. As he walked through the slowly healing colonies, surrounded by humans and aliens and former void entities all working together, he spoke quietly to the galactic observers who had come to witness the impossible. You see, the galaxy made a mistake. 200 years ago, you thought the choice was between order and chaos, between your way and our way. But there was always a third option, becoming something better together. Admiral Corvani, now serving as a liaison between the Galactic Council and the human volunteers, watched a group of children from 6 different species playing a game that one of the volunteers had taught them. "We were afraid," he admitted to Webb, "afraid of what you would change in us." "Change is frightening," Webb agreed. "But emptiness is worse. The Void Collective taught us that. They were what the galaxy could become if it chose fear over growth, isolation over connection, war over transformation. Within 6 months, the entire character of the galactic conflict had shifted. The Void Collective stopped expanding and began evolving. Former enemies worked alongside humans to create something unprecedented, a truly cooperative galactic civilization. Weapons were converted into tools of creation. Military academies became centers of learning and art. Star systems that had been consumed by emptiness bloomed with new forms of life and consciousness. The Galactic Council officially lifted humanity's ban, but by then it no longer mattered. The old structures of power and control had been replaced by something organic and collaborative. Humans didn't rule this new galaxy. They simply helped it remember how to be alive. High Counselor Thara, her crystalline form now whole and glowing, with new purpose, stood before the Reformed Council in its new chambers on Earth. "We kept humanity out of our wars because we feared they would change us," she said. "We were right to fear that change. We were wrong to resist it." As the stars wheeled overhead, Dr. Webb stood in his garden, tending to flowers that had been gifts from a dozen different worlds. A young former void entity, now taking the shape of shifting light and music, approached him with a question. "Dr. Webb, why did you help us? We were your enemies. We destroyed so much." Webb smiled, his weathered hands gentle on the alien flower's luminous petals. "Because that's what humans do, child. We see what could be, not just what is. And we never give up on the possibility that tomorrow can be better than today." In the end, the galaxy hadn't been saved by superior weapons or brilliant tactics. It had been saved by the most human trait of all, the stubborn, unreasonable, impossible belief that everyone deserves a second chance to become who they really are. The war was over. The transformation had just begun.